Okay. So, Mr. Burrows, how do you explain that while we hear a lot of anti-Israel news coming out of Britain, and yet you are here as part of a very pro-Israel
Yeah.
caucus?
There's a lot of friends of Israel in Britain, in the British Parliament as well. And what I'm doing here is, at this very important time for Israel, both in terms of their immediate threats very much on their border, and also the regional issue that we all face in terms of the threat of religious hatred and intolerance, is to stand alongside, shoulder to shoulder, standing in solidarity as a British Member of Parliament with Israel, saying that we're on your side.
But many in the British street don't approve of the Israeli settlement policies and think that is something that comes in between the relationship, the Britain-Israel relationship. So how do you explain this to these kind of constituents?
Yeah, there is concern. I think what is important is that we come over, we see, we learn, we listen, rather than just simply be armchair critics. And they are vocal, and they're in my constituency as well as others. And we need to recognise that, particularly in the context of what's going on in the world in the Middle East, that Israel stands very much as that lighthouse, as we were hearing today, in around lots of storms and problems. And so we need to recognise the context, and rather than just sort of pick on particular issues, recognise that we want to support peaceful coexistence and look very practically, for example, as I did yesterday in factories where there's Palestinians and Israelis working together, and concerned about work and getting a pay packet for their family, and realise that that's another context that we don't hear about much. So let's get a balance, and let's recognise that in terms of freedom and democracy, that Israel and Britain are friends very much together.
So so we're this evening we're going to have a very crucial vote. I understand that the Conservative Party has been trying to explain that this is merely a symbolic vote, but and a political move by the Labour. But if you could elaborate on that, I'd be glad.
Yeah, it is. It is a political move. It's been initiated by a Labour member of Parliament, a pro-Palestinian member of Parliament, and there's a lobby. There's a big campaign to support this motion, but it's predominantly a Labour Party measure that will be supported predominantly by Labour Party members. The government members of Parliament are over 100 or so. As well, anyone linked with the government do not get involved in these type of debates anyway. And particularly in this case, I supported an amendment that would say, look, in terms of the issue of recognition, it has to follow a proper process after successful peace negotiations. That's the appropriate way. It's not the appropriate, not the timing is not right for it now. And so we need to recognise the context. It isn't the whole of Parliament that's going to. I'm here for one. I'm showing the fact that many of other Conservative members of Parliament will not be taking part in it. They think that this is being politicised by the Labour shadow ministers. And so let's just recognise, let's not overstate the importance of it. It will have a significance, but it's more a campaigning significance. And I think we need to be much more realistic and understand what's happening on the ground here, and that doesn't send a particularly positive, constructive message to those decision makers. We need to recognise that there's other ways to support Israel.
But isn't
And
there
indeed, sorry. And indeed, not just Israel, to support Palestinians as well, that there's other ways to support them.
But isn't there a concern that maybe, I think for the first time, I've heard concerns from Brits that for the first time, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is actually could become an election topic, an important election topic. Do you see that happening?
Hey, I mean, there's lots of election topics in Britain, as in lots of other countries. The bigger election topic is who's going to best run the economy rather than who is running Israel and Palestinians. So I think let's hold a balance. Certainly, there's people vocally now. Look, just to understand, I've had hundreds of emails about me to recognise a Palestinian state, but only tens of emails to say the issue of the Islamic State is one that needs military action. Now, there's an imbalance. It's a disproportionate influence. Now, that's more because there's a very vocal lobby rather than actually what matters in the end. So when we get to the election, I think what people will also understand is that actually the Prime Minister, David Cameron, has stood very firm. He hasn't just simply responded to the louder voices, whether it's on Gaza or on the issue of recognition. He recognises the long-term plan, not only economically but also internationally, needs people who are statesmen rather than people who are just going to jump for the loudest voices.
So, do you see any concern at all to the British-Israel relationship, or is it strong?
I think you need to the best thing for Israelis and Palestinians as well is to do what I did when I last year was just re-listen to the Prime Minister's speech to the Knesset, and you'll see there's someone who doesn't just simply jump when he's told to jump. He is a true and deep friend of Israel, and it's these times that we need to look deeper and more concerned at what is the long-term future for Israelis and Palestinians, and it's not going to be on the floor of the House of Commons today. We need to look beyond that and recognise that there are true friends of Israel that are concerned for peace for all Israelis, all Palestinians, and that's not going to come through this politicised motion. It's going to come working hand in hand constructively for peaceful coexistence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bar.